Droshing or droshing nicely? I completed it. It was hot at the end. The first 75 or 80 were fine. The last 20 or 25 were uphill, no shade. It's about 88. It's about 88 at the end. So the end was really tough, but it feels good to accomplish it. I don't know if I need to do that ride again. Like I believe in the cause, but check. Yeah, I would love it. I would love a double whiskey. Thank you. I would love a double whiskey. Thank you. Yeah, water would be great. I know. The exiles have come. The bedraggled exiles. Yeah, that's it. That's all you need. Even in this setting, no one will sit in the front row. It's like, what is it with Jews? Seriously, what is it? Come on closer if you're willing to. Take away the front row. That's a good point. Kajantif, everyone. Look at the sheets I handed out. Psalm 130 gets a lot of attention on the high holidays and between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. If you come early in shul, this is recited just before we say the Chatzi Kaddish of the Shachrit Amidah, the whole psalm, and that's said antiphonally, right? One person saying it, someone else repeating it each day. Thank you. Each day between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and also Yom Kippur. And I want to introduce the words, sing it, do some study on it, and then linger on it. So it's one of the 15 psalms that are called Shirei HaMa'alot, the songs of ascent that we believe our ancestors would sing as they were walking up the southern steps of to the platform of the temple, making their pilgrimage. So that's why it was a song of ascents. It's also the phrase from which we get the service we do occasionally on Rosh Hashanah here and Shabbat in Temple B'Tham called Hama'alot. Shir Hama'alot, a song of ascents. Mima amakim kraticha Adonai. From the depths I call out to you, O God. Adonai shima v'koli. God, listen to my voice. Tiyena oznecha. May your ears, kashuvot, be attentive, listening. Lekol tachanunai, to the sound of my plea. Okay, I'm going to make an audible because I'm changing the order of what I was going to do. So everything I just said, just pause. How long do you have? The order doesn't matter. We're gonna switch it. So we have with us Rabbi Yosef Goldman, who is on our clergy and davening team this year. Has been a friend and colleague for well over a decade, and without embarrassing him too much, is producing some of the most wonderful and evocative Jewish liturgical music out there. And I didn't know when he was going to be coming in because he's also leading part of Musaf in the sanctuary. So we're going to jump over to the bottom of page 3. Because to have the opportunity to sing a new tune in the presence of the composer is really a special thing. In fact, I'm gonna, in a moment, I'm gonna yield to him because far be it from me to know what note to begin on and to know what key is actually written. We're jumping ahead a couple of days to Yom Kippur, and the formula that we say just before the Ashamnu prayer. Right? Let's look at the words. Ein anachnu, we are not. Azei fanim. It's translated as insolent, like strong of face, kind of given that kind of look, like we know what we're all about. Ukshe oref, or stiff-necked. Lomar lefanecha, to say in front of you, God, tzadikim anachnu, that we're righteous. Velo chatanu, and we haven't sinned. We're not so insolent and stiff-necked to say that. Aval, because actually, in fact, anachnu chatanu, we have sinned, and therefore anenu. Please answer us. So I want us to sing this beautiful tune that Rabbi Goldman recently composed, and we're going to do some study on what that phrase means in the Machzor, how it got to be there, and then we'll sing it again. So bechavod. And sorry, if you need the transliteration, it's the top of page 4.
Start with just the refrain of Anenu. Anenu, 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 Anenu. Just that.
Anenu, 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 Anenu.
Anenu, 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 Anenu. We'll break that down. Anenu, 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 Anenu. Put it together. Anenu, sorry. Anenu, 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 Anenu. Let's try that. Ein anachnu azei fanim ukshei oref lomar lefanecha. Again. Ein anachnu azei fanim ukshei oref lomar lefanecha. Tzadikim anachnu,
Tzadikim anachnu,
velo chatanu.
velo chatanu.
Tzadikim anachnu,
Tzadikim anachnu,
velo chatanu.
velo chatanu.
Great. I'll sing that whole first section and then join me on the repeat. In anachnu azei fanim ukshe oref lomar lefanecha.
Ein anachnu azei fanim ukshe oref lomar lefanecha.
Tzadikim anachnu velo chatanu. Tzadikim anachnu
velo chatanu.
And the second time is a little bit longer. Tzadikim anachnu velo chatanu. Let's try that.
Tzadikim anachnu velo chatanu.
Okay, so that is the whole first section. Imagine that someone comes up to you who has done you wrong and says that and stops there. I can't say that that I am so righteous that I've never done wrong. How would you feel about that interaction? Do you feel like they've said what needs to be said to you? You're in a space where both of you recognize that there has been wrong. And does that feel like an apology? I can't say I'm perfect. It's close. It's so close, but so far away. And then we have these words that actually unlock a relationship, unlock space for repair. 3 words, aval anachnu chatanu. But in fact, we, because we are reciting this collectively. In fact, we have sinned. And so and I wrote it this summer with colleagues, we added a word that is found in a lot of the liturgy, but not in this particular prayer. Go straight into saying, Anenu, answer us. Because now we're in a place where we can say, okay, I acknowledge that I have messed up, but this is what I wish, I hope can come now from this space of repair. Let's see. Aval anachnu chatanu. Say that together.
Aval anachnu chatanu.
Whoa, we're ready for Yom Kippur. Let's do that again.
Aval anachnu chatanu.
Okay, so let's sing this as the repeat from the top, and when we get to Ki manachnu velo chatanu, tzadikim anachnu velo chatanu. Aval anachnu chatanu, anenu, anenu. Remember how that goes? Anenu, anenu. We're going up. Anenu, 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 anenu. Okay, from the top. Ein anachnu azei fanim ukshei oref lomar lefanecha. Ein anachnu azei fanim ukshei oref lomar lefanecha.
Tzadikim anachnu velo chatanu. Tzadikim anachnu velo chatanu.
Aval
Anachnu chatanu, anenu, 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 anenu. Anenu, 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 anenu.
One more time from the top, and then we get back to this anenu. If you hold down the anenu, put in the aval anachnu chatanu as a kind of counter melody over the anenu. Okay.
אנחנו הזפנים וכשעורף לומר לפניך. אין אנחנו הזפנים וכשעורף לומר לפניך. צדיקים אנחנו ולא חטאנו, צדיקים אנחנו ולא חטאנו.
Back to the top.
אין אנחנו הזפנים וכשעורף לומר לפניך. אין אנחנו הזפנים וכשעורף לומר לפניך. צדיקים אנחנו ולא חטאנו, צדיקים אנחנו ולא חטאנו. אבל אנחנו חטאנו, עננו, 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 עננו.
אנחנו חטאנו,
עננו, 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 עננו.
One more time. אבל אנחנו חטאנו,
עננו, 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 עננו. אבל אנחנו חטאנו, עננו, 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 עננו.
So you're now the first group of Jews to sing that and learn that in our community. And I like associating the music and the spirit with the mind and how the words got to be where they are in the prayer book and what they might be trying to evoke from us beyond or deeper than the first level. So there are versions of this formula that say not just anachnu chatanu, that we sinned, but anachnu avotenu chatanu, that we and our ancestors sinned. And one of the sources of that little formula is in number 8 in your sheets, from the 106th Psalm. It's not a direct quote, but seems to be a clear inspiration to the liturgists. Remember, the liturgists who were writing this material 2,000 years ago, they knew the Bible by heart, literally. And so one word, or even sometimes a syllable, was evocative of so many of the things that they were immersed in terms of biblical verses. And so it went both directions. They would come across things in liturgy and they would know instantly, even if they didn't compose it, where it came from. And as they were composing liturgy, they were suffused in their study of the Tanakh, and they'd say, this image deserves to be something that is said liturgically, not just studied as a text. So, chatanu im avotenu. We have sinned with our ancestors, or like our ancestors. He'avinu, we transgressed. Hirshanu, evil things. So you hear in that verse the overtone of how it turns into what we say right before we beat our chests. And then the psalm, which is normally not, it doesn't tell story or history, it's mostly poetry, but sometimes there is narrative built into the poetry, explains what does it mean to say that our ancestors sinned. Avotenu v'mitzrayim lo hiskilu niflotecha. Our ancestors in Egypt did not understand your wonders. Lo zachru et rov chasadecha. They didn't remember, mention, make note of your great acts of chesed. Vayamru al yam b'yamsuf. And they rebelled on the waters of the sea.
at first glance, can anyone think of what this might be referring to? Like, what is the book of Psalms remembering about the Exodus story? That our ancestors didn't understand God's wonders, that we had a rebellion at the Sea of Reeds? What could that be a reference to? It's clearly a memory that whoever's writing this, I don't know, about 10th century BCE, has inherited this notion that the ones who came out of Egypt were rebellious, and they specifically rebelled at the sea, and they didn't acknowledge God's wonders. Any thoughts? Yeah, Jen.
If I remember correctly, before crossing, before Nachshon went in, there was, I don't want to do this.
Okay, so
When I saw the ocean when I was a baby or a little kid, I was like, I'm not taking a nap. And so,
right.
yeah.
It's like when Jackie was installed as president. She's like, I don't think I want this. I'm gonna walk away from this sea. It's gonna drown me. Right. So what's fascinating about your comment, Jen, I feel like it's too loud, the microphone, is that you are transposing wonderfully a midrash from 1,000 years later, literally, into the book of Psalms, but because the notion of Nachshon being the one who went into the water, and once he got up to his neck, that's when God split it as a way of responding to the Israelites' faith. It may be that already in the time of the writing of the Psalms, which is about, again, 1,900 BCE, some version of that story existed, even though the Torah doesn't mention it at all, and then it gets recorded in the Midrash later. Yeah?
Then is it, well, then two other things. When they saw the Pharaoh and the horses coming after them, wasn't there a moment
Of fear?
yeah.
Not so spelled out in the Torah itself. But it's interesting by that a couple of hundred years after that, it was sort of embedded, at least in the consciousness of the author of the Psalms, that there was some hesitancy. Yeah?
All right, then my last comment is
Yeah.
the entire 40 years and all the fetching.
Okay, good. So at the
Starting
very
3
least,
days later.
what's that?
Starting 3 days after yeah.
Correct. Correct, right? So there was definitely rebellion very soon after. The specific reference to the sea is interesting, and it evokes, or it pushes the rabbis later on to be more specific about it. Look at verse 8, back in source 8, Vayoshiim leman shemo, God saved them because of God's own name, not because they were worthy, right? And that's the whole theme of the vidui. Like, we're going to ask you, God, for forgiveness, even though we are guilty and we've done awful things. Lahodia et gvurato. God did it for God's own greatness. Look at Rashi on this. This is source 9. On the phrase vayimru alayam, that they rebelled by the sea. Hayu miktane emunah. They were people of little faith. Amru, they said. Keshem sha'anu olim mikan mitzad zeh. Just as we ascend from this side of the water, af hamitzruim olim mitzad zeh. They're coming up on the other side. Vayavo acharenu. Eventually, they're going to come and get us. Meaning, we're not nearly as free as we think. Ad shiramaz hakadosh baruch hu. At that moment, when the Israelites exhibited a lack of faith, God, it says hinted, basically winked at the sea, vehekiyam leyabasha, and vomited them out into the dry land. Az, and only after that, this is now kind of doing a very close reading of the verses from the book of Exodus, Vayar Yisrael el Mitzrayim meit al sfat hayam. It was not until, quote, that Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the edge of the sea, in verse 30 of chapter 14, Lafichach, therefore, right after that, the Torah says, Vayaminu badonai. They started to believe in God only then, suggesting they didn't believe in God beforehand. Avam d'chila lo ha'minu. So Rashi reads it out of this moment where the Torah does praise the Israelites as being people of faith, but when were they people of faith? After their enemies were not just separated from them, but dead on the side of the sea, and that's when they started to believe, which the psalmist, according to Rashi, understands to be a rebellion. Right? It's easy to believe when you've been shown proof that you're okay. It's much harder to believe when you're in the vulnerability still. Right? Look at source 10. Yes, Matt. Oh, it's so interesting you mentioned that. Yeah, Rashi puts at the end of his commentary this word matzati. I found this. Sometimes Rashi doesn't quote his sources. He just if you know Rashi, you know he's collecting from dozens of midrashim, and he doesn't quote them at all. Sometimes he specifically says where I got this, and every once in a while he has this kind of quizzical comment at the end saying, yeah, I found this somewhere, I don't know where it is, and it's recorded. It's also possible that this is a comment of a later editor that got woven into the original text of Rashi, and that an editor is saying, I found this comment of Rashi. We're not sure, but Rashi may have said, yeah, but I thought I'd bring this to you because I found this idea somewhere. Look at source 10. Oh yeah, sorry, Kobe. Yeah. 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 And I think it's a little bit of both. I think we can talk about faith similarly to the way we talk about love and affection, that it's possible that you have faith and therefore you act inspired by that faith, and it's possible that you act without yet having faith, but through the action, the faith builds. I think the same is true in loving encounters. Sometimes we have a feeling of love towards a beloved, towards a child, and therefore we act lovingly, and sometimes the feeling of love is elusive, but you start acting lovingly and the feeling comes back. So I think it goes in both directions. Look at the source 10. This source is in the middle of a long conversation, and the context is a little complicated, but it has to do with whether or not the vidui, the alchet, the ashamnu, which the song that we sang is the immediate introducer of, how central it is to the Yom Kippur experience. Amar Marzutra said, Lo Amaran, we did not say that, that is from a previous context, Ella de lo Amar, meaning he must do the full vidui, the full confession, if he hadn't said at least the words Aval Anachnu Chatanu, but we indeed have sinned. Aval Amar, but if he said Aval Anachnu Chatanu, meaning if you're late to shul or you have to go somewhere and you at least said the words that Yosef was saying before is the thing that moves an almost apology to an apology. Yeah, I'm not perfect. Actually, let me take that back. I sinned to you. I'm responsible. I did the wrong thing. If you indeed said that, tu lo tzarich. You don't really need to say anything further. I've just shortened Yom Kippur services for you by a long shot, right? That the central piece of the entire Yom Kippur day is 3 words. Aval anachnu chatanu. To Amar bar Hamdudeh, a rabbi named Bar Hamdudeh said, Hava ke'emna kame de Shmuel. I was once standing before Shmuel. V'hava yatev. He was still sitting. I was standing because the Gabbai told me to stand because we're in a very important part of the service, right? You know how many times we tell you to stand because we're saying this is a really important part of the service? He was still sitting. But when the person leading davening arrived at the spot, Amar and said, Aval anachnu chatanu, but we have sinned, kam mekam. He got up immediately. Amar, he said, Shma mina ikar vidui haihu. This is the thing that mostly matters on Yom Kippur. And if you look at source 11, every human being is imperfect. Even previous generations whom we may idealize contain sinners. As the rabbis taught, no one has walked the earth and not sinned. There are a lot of words on Yom Kippur. We're going to get to them in 8 days. And the essence seems to be actually not even the list of sins, the acrostic list of sins that you may or not individually connect to, because how many of us, personally did all the ones on that list, but the 3 words that introduce it all, Aval Anachnu Chatanu. After all, we actually did something wrong. I want to invite you to close your eyes for a second. And place your feet flat on the ground in front of you. Place your hands on your legs, either palms down, which is a gentle embrace of self, or palms up, which is a stance of openness to this moment. You may begin to feel two opposite feelings in your body. One, a sense of heaviness, that gravity is pulling you down, a certain descent into a deep cavity or a deep embrace. And you may feel lofty and diaphanous like the air, as if you have no weight at all, and that you are disembodied and soaring. If you haven't yet, begin to focus on your breathing, so it's not just an automatic act. You can breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. And you can even make the breathing out slightly longer than the breathing in, which calms the nervous system and which makes even breathing a generous act, giving more than you are taking. And I want you to see in your mind's eye, to visualize 3 words. In Hebrew or in English letters, Aval, Anachnu, Chatanu. But we have sinned. Aval, Ani, Chatati. But I have sinned. It's a stance of unchecked, unqualified personal responsibility. No buts, no rationalizations. I'm not so insolent. I'm not so stiff-necked to stand before you, my God, my partner, my child, my friend. I will not stand in front of you and say that I am fully righteous. Hava anachnu chatanu. We have sinned. Aval ani chatati. But I have sinned. Who needs to hear this from you today, this week? Who is waiting for an unqualified apology? Who's heard your almost apology, but waiting for the full one? Whose year will be launched more sweetly and more brightly if you can say to that person, Hava ani chatati. It was my fault. It was my transgression.
הזפנים וכשיורף לומר לפניך אין אנחנו הזפנים וכשיורף לומר לפניך צדיקים אנחנו ולא חטאנו צדיקים אנחנו ולא חטאנו אין אנחנו הזפנים וכשיורף לומר לפניך אין אנחנו הזפנים וכשיורף לומר לפניך צדיקים אנחנו ולא חטאנו צדיקים אנחנו ולא חטאנו אבל אנחנו חטאנו עננו 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 אבל אנחנו חטאנו עננו 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 אבל אנחנו חטאנו עננו 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 אין אנחנו הזפנים וכשעורף לומר לפניך אין אנחנו הזפנים וכשעורף לומר לפניך צדיקים אנחנו ולא חטאנו צדיקים אנחנו ולא חטאנו אבל אנחנו חטאנו עננו 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 אבל אנחנו חטאנו אבל אנחנו חטאנו אבל אנחנו חטאנו.
And now go back to where we were before Rabbi Yosef came in. Go back to number 1. This is attuned to these words, Mima Makim, from the depths I call out to you, God. Adonai Shema B'Koli, God listen, Shema B'Koli, listen to my voice. It was composed by Joey Weisenberg, another composer we do a lot from in this community. And if you want, after Yontif, and look this up, it's a beautiful recording, and Rabbi Yosef Goldman appears on the recording as one of the background voices. And I cannot do it justice without such a chorus, but we'll try.
Sorry, what is it called?
Mima'amakim. I believe so. Yeah. Mima'amakim. Mima'amakim. Kiraticha Hashem Mimamakim Mimamakim Kiraticha Hashem again Mimamakim Mimamakim Kiraticha Hashem Mimamakim Mimamakim Kiraticha Hashem Adonai Shema Shema Vekoli Adonai Shema Shema Vekoli Adonai Shema Shema Vekoli Adonai Shema Shema Vekoli Mimamakim Kiraticha Hashem Mimamakim Kiraticha Hashem Mimamakim Kiraticha Hashem Mimamakim Kiraticha Hashem Adonai Shema Shema Vekoli Adonai Shema Shema Vekoli Adonai Shema Shema Vekoli Adonai Shema Shema Vekoli. Now, I have no musical theory background. I can't tell you what key that was in, if it's minor or major. It sounds minor, but I'm just guessing. But you don't need theory to have an instinctual reaction as to what that song feels like. What's the feel of the tune that Joey composed to that music? Heartfelt, haunting, forlorn. Right? There's a heaviness to it, right? It's interesting that the author of the psalm, not the composer of the music, doesn't really give a hint as to what depths he is finding himself, or he thinks the nation is finding itself in, such that he's calling out from that place. Right? It's a song of ascents. I'm singing it as I go up to the temple. I call out to you from the ma'amakim, from a place of depth. God, listen to my voice. There are innumerable interpretations as to what the depths might be. I bring you just a few of the dozens. Look at source 2. This is Rabbi Avraham Ibn Ezra, medieval Spanish grammarian and commentary on the Torah. He says, Shir ha'alot mima'amakim, a song of ascents from the depths. Ta'am mima'amakim, what's the taste? What's the reason behind these depths? Ba'avor hayot Yisrael begalut, because the Jewish people were in diaspora, vidalut, and a place of thinness, vikalut, and the lack of seriousness, ushvelut, and lowness. Ibn Ezra is imposing upon a verse that was clearly not written in exile, right? That verse itself was written in the land of Israel when the Jews had just essentially completed building the temple, and they were using it liturgically. But Ibn Ezra says, as I sing this in Spain, right, what's the depth of my despair? I'm calling out to you, God, from the depth of exile. I'm far from Israel. I'm far from Jerusalem. I'm far from where the spirit of the Jewish people pulsates. That's my lowness. That's my thinness. The air is thinner in the diaspora than it would be in Israel. That's his perspective. Source 3, the Malbim. He is a Ukrainian sage from the 19th century. Malbim is an acronym for his name. And he says, Shir Hamalot, a song of ascents, Tfilah al slichat avon. This is a prayer to forgive iniquity or sin. Mima'amakim kraticha Adonai. I call out to you from the depths. What is the depths? What's the deep thing I'm in? Ha'omek yomar al omek. It's kind of a poetic way of saying that one aspect of depth will expound on another aspect of depth, an omek mamashi, an actual physical depth. Hafach mekom hagavoa. I have been turned around from a high place. Kemo he'ani, like an impoverished one. V'hachalash, or a weakened one. V'hagula, an exiled one. V'chadoma, like all those people, I am deep in it. In what way? Gam yomar al omek nafshi. It's the depth of my spirit, of my soul. Mi shebechet'o hitrachek mi Hashem. I created my own depth out of my sin that distanced me from God. Hagavoa, who is high. God is high. I could be high if I didn't err, but since I sinned, I put myself in a low place. This is not geographical. This is spiritual. God is gavoa me'al gvoim, the highest of all the high. V'nafsho omeret b'murad u'v'shvelut. But this person's soul is standing in rebellion, in a low place, and in something sunken. Alzeh yomar, and therefore the verse says, Anochi karaticha. I'm calling out to you, God, mishnei omakim, from two depths, sh'ani bam, that I'm in. Omek v'shiflut haguf, a depth and a lowness of the body. Im omek v'shiflut hanefesh, along with the depth of my spirit. So, Ibn Ezra says this is geographic. If you're outside the land of Israel, you're going to be in a deep place. Malbim says, wherever you are, if you've sinned and distanced yourself from God, then you're going to be calling out to God from the depth of your own embarrassment and shame. Look at source 4. Rabbi David Altshuler, 17th to 18th century, I believe he was in Germany, maybe Prague, I forgot. His commentary on the Psalms is called Metzudat David. Mi ma'amakim. What is the depth I'm calling out to, God? Mitoch omech hatzarot. My troubles. I'm having a hard time. It's not because I've sinned. It's not because I don't live in the right place. But I call to you, God, from a deep place of distress. Right? Tsuris in Yiddish is from the Hebrew word sarot. Karati lach Adonai. Right? And Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz, the modern 20th century rabbi, says something similar. Shir harmalot mima makim mimtsuka umishefel hamadrega. From a distressing place and from being in a low place. Oh, mipnimiyut halev. He turns it around on the second half. What is the depth that I'm calling out to you? It's not that I'm far from you because I've sinned. It's not because I'm far from you because I'm in the exile. And it's not because I'm in a low place. I'm actually calling out to you from the deepest place of my heart. Turns the metaphor, makes it positive. Mima'amakim kraticha. God, listen to me because I couldn't be more earnest. I couldn't be more sincere. I'm calling out to you from the innermost sanctum of my heart. If you put them all together, or not necessarily all together, but keep them all in your mind simultaneously, then it's a very interesting opening to a psalm. And it's a very interesting thing to be thinking about during the high holidays, because again, if you came in late, this psalm is recited every day on Rosh Hashanah through Yom Kippur and every day in between. That I might be calling out to you, God, because I'm low, because I brought myself low because of my sin, because I feel far from the center of the Jewish people in Israel, because there's sadness around me, or I'm calling out to you from the deepest place that I have inside me. My prayer couldn't be more true. And it might be that every one of those shades is dancing around inside of us as we move to a place of prayer on these days or any days. I want to read this interesting story with you, source 6 from the Talmud. It's in Aramaic. I'll read it and translate it. Amar le Rabbi Zreika le Rav Safra. Rabbi Zreika said to his friend Rav Safra, Ta chazi come look. Ma bein takifei da'arad Yisrael. What's the difference between the strong, powerful ones of the land of Israel, lachasidei Bavel, and the righteous ones of Babylonia? You should know that in the Talmud there was an ongoing polemic between the sages in the land of Israel and the sages of Babylonia. And depending on where you are in the Talmud, one of them is being called out by the other as being not sufficiently worthy, right? And this story, the Eretz Israel, the land of Israel sages are going to come out cleaner than the Babylonian ones. Chasidei de Bavel, which righteous ones of Babylonia am I referring to? Rav Huna and Rav Chisda, two rabbis. These rabbis are not nobodies. They appear on almost every page of the Talmud. These are big guys. As my teacher, Rabbi Roth, would say, these are not noch schleppers. These are significant teachers. Ki hava mitzterich alma lemitra. When the world needed rain, when there was a drought, Amre, they would say, Nikanev hadade v'niv'e rachami. Let us all come together and we'll ask for God's mercy. Efshar d'miratzei hakadosh baruch hu diete meitre. Maybe if we lead you in prayer because we're that good, then God will be appeased and bring down rain, right? This is in a theology that suggests the reason why there's no rain at any given moment is because God is withholding it, maybe for our sinfulness. So they said, follow me, get on my back. We'll have a public gathering and davening, and we're going to lead the davening so well that maybe God will bring rain, right? Not the worst thing in the world. But, Takifei da'ared Yisrael, the strong ones of the land of Israel, Kigon Rabbi Yonah Avu de Rabmani. Let's look at this guy named Rabbi Yonah, who's the father of Rabmani. Ki hava mitzterich alma lemitra. When the world needed rain, when it was a drought, hava aya levete, he would go to his house, va'amar lahu, and he would tell everyone in his household, havuli gualki, give me my sack, ve'ezil va'aiti li bezuza ivura. I'm going to go buy some grain. Meaning, I'm going out and doing some shopping, pay no attention to me, I'm just going to go on an errand. Ki hava nafek levara, when he would get outside, azil v'kai beduchta amikta, he would stand in a low place, literally in a pit, he would create a pit for himself. Dichtiv, because it says, from the verse we just sang, Mi ma'amakim karaticha Adonai, I call out to you from the deep places, O God. By the way, if you've done some traveling in the Jewish world, you may have been to a synagogue where it's constructed in such a way that, unlike the classic American model where the person leading davening stands in a higher place, particularly in Eastern Europe, the spot where the Shliach Tzibur would stand was a divot. The first place I ever saw this was Krakow. My first visit to Krakow in 1990, in the shul that's called the Ramah Shul, connected to Rabbi Moshe Isserlis. There's a reading table in the center that's slightly raised for the Torah reading. But the davener doesn't lead from there. The davener leads from the front, in front of the Arona Kodesh, and in order to get to the place, you have to step down. You step down, I don't know, about 2 inches, and you're in a hole. And the reason why synagogues were constructed that way was for this reason. Mi ma'amakim kraticha Adonai, I'm calling out to you from the depths. So this is what this rabbi would do. The kai beduchta tzniya, he would stand in a modest, secluded place, no one would see him. Umikase besaka, he would cover himself with a shawl or some cloth. Uva'e rachame, he alone in private, not asking anyone to look at him, would ask for mercy. Va'ate mitra, rain would come. Ki hava'ate levete, when he would go home, amrele, they would say to him, Aiti mar ivura, did the master bring grain? Meaning, have you bought the grain that you wanted to? Because apparently he was going to buy grain because there wasn't enough around because of the drought. Amar lahu, he said to them, Amena, I said to myself, Ho'il va'ata mitra, since it began to rain, because it rained as a result of his prayer, Hashta ravach alma, there's relief to the world, meaning I don't have to go procure grain at a high rate, it's going to come to me. How does the story praise him compared to what the sages in Babylonia did? What did he do that they didn't? He did it with humility. He wasn't calling attention to himself. He wasn't getting on my back, and he exercised the space in such a way that he put himself into a low place, and the idea is that God responded to that humility and that lowness and did not claim credit for it. Right? So the story is used as a way, it's told, interestingly, It's written in Aramaic, which means it was probably written in Babylonia, but it's written in Babylonia as a polemic against the Babylonian sages who were very full of themselves, who said, we'll take care of it, we're in charge, we're the leaders, and in praise of the powerful ones of the land of Israel who found a different way to enter into a place of deep humility, from there to pray, and from there, hopefully, to have God respond. So I think one of the questions for us as we enter this season is, what is the omek? What is the depth out of which we should pray? Is it a depth of humility that we haven't yet reached because it's hard to reach that humility? Are our prayers purer because we're afraid and we're distressed? Are our prayers purer because we're somehow accessing the deepest part of our hearts when we open our mouths to sing? And are we willing to deflect some attention and not get and take and claim credit for every one of our accomplishments, but let what we do speak softly, and let that itself be a certain depth of character that can make it the season that it's supposed to be? All of those questions and more might be swirling as we say these words and as we sing them again. If you want to go back, it's on page 1. Mi mamakim, mi mamakim, keraticha Hashem, mi mamakim, mi mamakim, keraticha Hashem. I'm going to bring it one note higher because it's too low. Too low, get that? Haha. Mi mamakim, mi mamakim, keraticha Hashem, mi mamakim, mi mamakim, keraticha Hashem, Adonai Shema, Shema vekoli, Adonai Shema, Shema vekoli, Adonai Shema, Shema vekoli, Adonai Shema, Shema vekoli, mi mamakim, mi mamakim, keraticha Hashem, 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 Adonai Shema, Shema vekoli, Adonai Shema,
Shema vekoli. Adonai Shema. Shema vekoli. Adonai Shema. Shema vekoli.
We pray for the power and the strength to offer up our tefillot from any number of depths from which true prayer comes. And we pray that our prayers will reach somewhere and we'll have an experience of having been answered in some meaningful way. Even if that answer emerges from our own selves, our own commitment to bring out into the world the very things that we pray are already there. Ay, 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 ranay, ray. Yanay, nay, nay, yanay, nay. Yay, nay, nay, yanay, nay. Yanay, nay, nay, yanay, nay. Yanay, nay, nay, nay. Yay, nay, nay, nay. Yanay, nay, nay, nay. Yay, yanay, nay. Yanay, nay, nay, nay. Yay, ay, ay, ay. Yanay, nay, nay, nay. Yay, nam, nay, yay, ya, da, 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 dum, da, da, da. Yay, da, da. Yanay, nay, yanay, nay, yay. Yanay, nay. Yay, day, day, danay, nay. Yanay, nay, 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 nay. Yanay, nay, 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 nay. Yanay, nay, 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 nay. Yanay, nay, 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 ay, day, day. Yanay, nay, hi, nay, nay, yay, day, yo. Shana Tova, everyone. Does anyone need Kaddish for your site? Anyone in mourning? Who's going to miss a Kaddish somewhere else? No? Okay. Released. I don't know what else is happening still on campus. You might catch the end of Musaf, or you have my blessing to go to lunch.
to a friend's. I mean, half of it's.